In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. A woman awakes during the night to find that her husband was not in bed. She puts on her robe and goes downstairs to look for him. She finds him sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, and he appears to be in deep thought, just staring at the wall. She watches as he wipes a tear from his eye and takes a sip of coffee. "What's the matter, dear?" she whispers as she steps into the room. "Why are you sitting down here this time of the night?" The husband looks up from his coffee. "Do you remember 20 years ago when we were dating and you were only 16?" he asks solemnly. "Yes, I do," she replies. The husband paused. The words were not coming easily. "Do you remember when your father caught us in the back seat of my car making love?" "Yes, I remember," said the wife, lowering herself into a chair beside him. The husband continued. "Do you remember when he shoved the double-barreled shotgun in my face and said, 'Either you marry my daughter or I'll send you to jail for 20 years'?" "Yes, I remember that too," she whispered softly. He wiped another tear from his cheek and said, "I would be getting out today." A wise woman who was traveling in the mountains found a precious stone in a stream. The next day, she met another traveler who was hungry, and the wise woman opened her bag to share her food. The hungry traveler saw the precious stone and asked the woman to give it to him. She did so without hesitation. The traveler left, rejoicing in his good fortune. He knew the stone was worth enough to give him security for a lifetime. But a few days later, he came back to return the stone to the wise woman. "I've been thinking," he said. "I know how valuable this stone is, but I give it back in the hope that you can give me something even more precious. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me this stone." A little boy, about 10 years old, was standing before a shoe store on the roadway, barefoot, peering through the window and shivering with cold. A lady approached the boy and said, "My little fellow, why are you looking so earnestly in that window?" "I've been asking God to give me a pair of shoes," was the boy's reply. The lady took him by hand and went into the store and asked the clerk to get half a dozen pairs of socks for the boy. She then asked if he could give her a basin of water and a towel. He quickly brought them to her. She took the little fellow to the back part of the store and, removing her gloves, knelt down, washed his little feet, and dried them with a towel. By this time, the clerk had returned with the socks. Placing a pair upon the boy's feet, she purchased him a pair of shoes. She tied up the remaining pairs of socks and gave them to him. She patted him on the head and said, "No doubt, my little fellow, you feel more comfortable now?" As she turned to go, the astonished lad caught her by the hand and, looking up in her face with tears in his eyes, answered the question with these words, "Are you God's wife?" A man was driving home late one afternoon, and he was driving above the speed limit. He notices a police car with its red lights on his rear view mirror. He thinks, I can outrun this guy. So he floors it, and the race is on. The cars are racing down the highway 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. Finally, as his speedometer passes 100, the guy figures he can't outrun the cop and gives up. He pulls over to the curb. The police officer gets out of his cruiser and approaches the car. He leans down and says, Listen, mister, I've had a really lousy day and I just want to go home. Give me a good excuse and I let you go. The man thought for a moment and said, 3 weeks ago, my wife ran off with a police officer. When I saw your cruiser in my mirror, I thought you were that officer and you were trying to give her back to me. A man observed a woman in the grocery store with a 3-year-old girl in her basket. As they passed the cookie section, the little girl asked for cookies, and her mother told her no. The little girl immediately began to whine and fuss, and the mother said quietly, Now, Monica, we just have half of the aisle left to go through. Don't be upset, it won't be long. Soon, they came to the candy aisle, and the little girl began to shout for candy, and when told she couldn't have any, began to cry. The mother said, There, Monica, don't cry, only 2 more aisles to go, and then we'll be checking out. When they got to the checkout stand, the little girl immediately began to clamor for gum and burst into terrible tantrum upon discovering there would be no gum purchased. The mother patiently said, Monica, we will be down this checkout in 5 minutes, and then you can go home and have a nice nap. The man followed them out to the parking lot and stopped the woman to compliment her. I couldn't help noticing how patient you were with little Monica, he began. The mother said, I am Monica. My little girl's name is Tammy.